I was posted to the 5th Battalion in Kaduna. I had been there for only a couple of months when the battalion had to send a company of troops to Makurdi to restore peace to the strife-torn homeland of the TVs. From that time in February 1964, the army had become permanently involved in the Nigerian politics of violence, just like you have it today. What APC, Egbekegbe, starting with Boko Haram, as well as especially the Igbo governors that are inviting the Nigerian army to come and kill their people, all because they want to keep the political patronage they are getting from the center, from Abuja. Now the Nigerian army is everywhere killing Nigerians, identified as enemies. Okay, so just like the horrible old days. It's not new. Okay, Nigerian army involved in Nigerian politics of violence. The officers' corps. After I was commissioned into the Nigerian army, I studied the institution as I saw it. My first impression, which really distressed me, was that it was not a nationalistic organization, and it was far from being revolutionary. A nationalistic army would first of all be ideological. Secondly, it would be political. Thirdly, it would be patriotic. How could the Nigerian army be ideological when it was still more than half commanded by British commissioned and warrant officers, whose only purpose was a strict adherence to British norms and practices? The British army was a monarchical army. The Nigerian army was the same. Hence, the nomenclature, Queen's own Nigerian regiment. How could the Nigerian army be political when its progenitor, the British army, had not intervened in British politics since 1660? That's some sort of rhetorical question there, okay? So, that is 300 years ago. And how could the Nigerian army be patriotic when it was foreign-inspired and foreign-led? Actually, the British themselves saw the Nigerian army as purely mercenary. From the colonial point of view, this was true. The British looked upon the Nigerian soldiers under their command as soldiers of fortune, who had no personal stake in the continuity of the British Empire. This was the reason why they were encouraged to remain stark illiterate. Nevertheless, a new age was dawning on the Nigerian army, as more and more educated, politically conscious, and revolutionary Nigerians were joining the officer corps of the army. It should be the aim of such officers to educate the Nigerian soldier, render him politically conscious and revolutionary, so that he could serve the nation in a new and higher role. Now, putting the officer corps of the army under my focus from April 1962, I got the impression that a terrible conflict was inevitable because the officers had widely different qualities. First, there were the sandust-trained officers who had undergone a total of 3 years training before they were commissioned. Almost invariably, they were real soldier-like officers who knew the art of the game. Almost invariably, again, they had imbibed the British officers' aloofness from politics and nationalism. 95% of them had never studied politics and were really not interested. They would, without hesitation and more or less without thinking of it, do whatever the politicians commanded them. They would open fire on innocent citizens without batting an eyelid. In addition, a good percentage of them readily and willingly hobnobbed with the politicians in order to attain the highest ranks and positions. That was the kernel of the inevitable conflict. The second group consisted of young, months-trained officers who were commissioned after just a year of military training in Nigeria and Britain. Unlike the Sanders-trained type, they were not eyebrow officers and were actually supposed to continue their training within the army. Needless to say, they also had read nothing about politics and were not in the least interested in the matter. Perhaps the only politics they knew very well was that their own selection into the army was based on the political division of the country, which conceded 50% representation to the northern region. As a result, those who were not qualified to enter found themselves favored by the quota system, a factor that further emphasized this disparity in the qualities of the officers. Thirdly, there were officers who were commissioned from the ranks. These were officers who had served for some years before they were sent for officers training. Most of them were commissioned for the services such as transport, education, and quartermaster services. Usually, they were older in age than the above quoted types. Some of them had attained high officer ranks by 1962 and were in fact holding the highest ranks in the army, while some were newly commissioned that were of junior officers' ranks. All of them had been, all of them have been rigidly schooled in the British military tradition and total political aloofness and obedience to the politicians. They had not studied politics, and most of them hooked themselves to politicians for promotional favors. This was another kernel of the inevitable conflict. Finally, there were the non-professional graduates in the fighting arms of the army. Actually, by April 1962, there were only 6 of us in this group: Majors Ojukwu and Banjo, Captains Olutoye, Ifeajuna and Rotimi, and Lieutenant Ademoyega, the writer. At least half of us were manifestly imbued with political and revolutionary zeal and principles. Having thus analyzed the officer's situation, it is necessary to substantiate these facts. As soon as I was commissioned in Aldershot, UK, and on my way back to Nigeria, I stopped in London and called at the Nigerian High Commission. I went straight to see Lieutenant Colonel J.T. Aguiyi-Ironsi, who was then the military attaché to the High Commissioner. I was meeting him for the first time, and having introduced myself, I asked him why Nigerianization was proceeding rather slowly in the Nigerian army, and why a British was being considered for appointment to replace the outgoing General Officer Commanding GOC. He explained to me that the decision lay with the politicians and that his own duty was simply to do whatever he was told. I knew that the Federal Civil Service was being rapidly Nigerianized and that the rapidity of this process was the achievement of senior Nigerian civil servants. Why could not the same be done in the army? To that, he replied that the British were very much on top in the army, and it was they who handled the Nigerianization process. I prodded him much further to see if he would agree that a lot could be achieved by uniting pressure groups on putting a pressure groups on politicians rather. That was a typo. Okay, I can't believe a published book will have a typo. Anyway, sorry about that. But let's continue. So he said, to give Nigerians such sensitive posts as could be used to hasten the Nigerianization process. He did not see this as necessary and did not really want to quarrel with the system or hasten the process of change. I did not question him any further. I I assured him that I would not waste time in London, but would return to Nigeria immediately to join my unit. A few months later, I pointed the same questions at Ademulegun. He simply laughed and wondered why I worried myself about those things. His attitude was the same as that of Brigadier Ironsi. The political trend in most parts of the world in the late 1950s and early 1960s was towards the military takeover of government, in which the soldier statesman emerged from the barracks during a political tension to restore his country to social and political peace, as well as economic stability. Such could only come from an enlightened, well-trained, and politically conscious officer corps. Nigeria was by no means aloof from this universal upsurge towards this high evaluation of the soldier statesman. So it was that, starting from 1962, more and more young Nigerian graduates pressed to join the army. Anxious about the implication of an enlightened officer corps, the British alerted the Balewa government using the university students' demonstration of 1962 as an excuse. Balewa then discouraged further enlistment of graduates into the infantry. Instead, they were sent to the supporting services, such as education and health. In fact, I was the last graduate to be commissioned into the infantry. And even then, British top officers tried to get me to join Education Corps, but I did not budge. With these things as they stood in 1962, it was not all easy to see how the Nigerian army could be trained and orientated to become political, patriotic, and revolutionary. Whereas, unless it was so trained, it would always prove a poor and blunt instrument in the hands of any aspiring soldier statesman. How long could such a training take? Colonel Abdel Nasser, who achieved such a purpose in Egypt, claimed that it took him 16 years to train and prepare the officer corps. It might take just as long or even longer in Nigeria. Any serious-minded aspiring soldier statesman might not mind, but then there were other baffling problems. In contradistinction to Egypt, Nigeria was a heterogeneous society. Again, in contradistinction to Egypt, Nigeria was not a community with only one language and one religion. Also, while Egypt had a single weak-kneed and disreputable enemy in an outdated monarchy, Nigeria had a formidable enemy in the forces of feudalism, retrogression, and oppression, exemplified by the northern oligarchy. Moreover, those factors were now assiduously working their way towards the total control and manipulation of the army through the promotion and strategic location of officers that danced to their tunes. In this way, they were gradually dividing the army into groups. One, there were those who were hand in gloves with the politicians. These groups saw that the existing system favored them, and they loved it. They were prepared and willing to perpetuate it. Two, there was a large majority of officers who were neither here nor there, but desired that they should eat their bread, buttered both sides, and not be disturbed by the wickedness of the rulers. Three, there was the very small and articulate group who hated both the military and the political situations in the country. They dreamed that their country would be freed from neo-colonialism and from the feudal political taskmasters. They dreamed of a day when Nigeria, a sleeping giant, would awake from a slumber, vindicate herself as the heart of Mother Africa, and blaze forth a trail of leadership for smaller African countries or nations. This small group kept constantly in touch with each other. They considered matters together and began gradually to sow the seed of political awakening and revolutionary consciousness in the hearts of some of the young officers of the army. Amazing. That is the end of chapter 2. So we have done 2 chapters. Now, Iruk, look at Iruk. That's very generous of you. Thank you. I'm trying to actually put the screen up there. So I don't know if I am still pretty much communicating and you are still pretty much with me as well. Is this thing sinking well, by the way? Like, is it like sinking well? You kind of like following it and you still enjoying it, are you? Well, I'm enjoying it too. I am. And I hope you are not just keeping it to yourself, okay? You need to share it. Invite your friends, invite your not so friendly friends, and just tell them to join us. I want to put that on the screen. Sorry about that. So I'm taking my second tea break. I mean, maybe another tea break now before we go to another chapter. What's that? Well, something was on my teacup there. So thank you so much. If you are still here with us, remember you can do me that favor. Okay, do me that favor and like the broadcast. All right. If you have read the book before, this is just to probably refresh or water your memory again and just bring them back. Because a lot of you who read this book, is the reason why you yourself you've concluded that this contraption can't work. You know, it wasn't put together to work. It has been so wrong from the onset. Okay. And if we love Nigeria, if all of you care and you really love Nigeria, the ideal thing right now is to join the advocacy for break it up and save lives. Okay. Sorry about that. You know, like, I don't know how my voice sounds to a lot of you. Somebody is asking, how can you get this book? Let me give you the trick. I tried to buy this book online and I was seeing the price like 700 pounds, 600 pounds, kilo day. Anyway, on Amazon or so, it's very scarce, but it is not scarce in Nigeria. If you are in Nigeria, go to any of those bookshops. Go to Ibadan. They got this in Ibadan. Totu. Where did you get this book from? Yomi Totu. It was sent to me from Nigeria. Honestly, this book was sent to me from Nigeria. It was shipped from Ibadan to Glasgow last week. So you can get it in Ibadan. You can get it in Lagos. You can get it. You possibly can get them anywhere. You just need to look for it. But majority of us will get the book and we won't read it. By the time you read chapter 1, chapter 2, you are tired. So you can listen to me. I'll read it to you. Like a bedtime story. I'll read that to you. And even if you are at work, I can read it to you like a lullaby. A kind of a lullaby or a kind of a podcast that you just kind of listen, you know. So yeah, if you want to get a copy, please don't go and spend your over 700 pounds buying the book. If you see it online, and usually it shouldn't be more than, at most, it shouldn't be more than 50 pounds or $50. Anything that says above $50, go and give them money to get it for you from the bookshops in Nigeria. They will get it for you. All right? And now, just reason. Because, you know, we can consider it like, you know, you're just like singing it to my ear, and while you are busy with other things. Hang on, what did he say there? Oh, okay, I got it now. All right, like you are still doing your thing, like you are driving, you are like walking, or you are like whatever you are doing, right? You don't have to sit in front of that screen listening to me. You could just put your device somewhere and put the earpiece on and all that, right? Now there's a lullaby. Iruk, thank you so much for that, your generosity. So Iruk has reached out to say, Mayogu, well done. Thank you. That's something that you could easily just put in the comment and say, Mayogu, well done. But you still have to be like generous with that. So thank you. Do you want me to continue to chapter 3 or you want us to take calls? What time is it? So let's go to chapter 3. Let's continue. God bless you, Jare, our captain. Okay, Bola, see, you read the comment. Oh, people who know where you can get the book are already putting out there. And it's so easy to. So when you send somebody to get you the book, in fact, you can even call the bookshop if they say they have it and you are abroad. Call the bookshop. Tell them you want them to post it to you. They will charge you the postage. Tell them you want a registered delivery. Some of these brilliant books, you can order them from Nigeria, and tell the bookshop to pack them for you. They will give them your address or any postal address, right? And if you have people you can send them up there, right? Send them to those places and let them get you the books. But don't use them to go and decorate your shelf. There are so many times that a lot of us don't have time to open books. Oh, I don't have that time. So let me be that one that sings it to you like a lullaby, right? So let's continue. Okay. Chapter 3, the ideology. Ideologically, the core of the revolutionary officers had agreed on a program of action to be implemented if we had successfully taken the reins of power into our hands. This program covers areas of politics, economy, education, social and foreign affairs. Politically, we believed that our immediate step would be to correct the worst anomaly of the 1957 Constitution by breaking down the country into smaller units or states. In other words, the 4 regions which existed till January 15, 1966 were to die instantly, and on their dead bodies were to emerge 14 states, each of which would be conterminous rather, with 2 of the former 26 provinces of the Federation, except Sokoto and Oyo State, which were to be conterminous with 1 province each. In effect, there would be 7 states each in the former North and South. These were to be governed by military governors who would be chosen on their merit and loyalty to the revolution. We also believed in the immediate release of political prisoners of those days, namely Chief Awolowo, Jakonde, Anthony Enaworo, Onitiri, Omishade, and so on. As we saw it, these actions would bring immediate relief to the suffering masses of the West and North, and would generate peace and concord throughout the Federation. Politically, too, we embraced collective leadership, and we plan to include both military and civilian personalities in the government. But the army would have the principal role of laying down and maintaining the principles and the momentum of the revolution. Unlike those military leaders who cashed in on our revolution and ruled the people carelessly and without direction, we would certainly have created a mass political movement which would lead and vigilantly guide the nation along the path of pure democratic socialism. This would have meant that the army would see itself not as an army of occupation which indulged itself in political reaction, revisionism, economic robbery, corruption, and sabotage as it did under the regimes of Ironsi and Gowon, but as an integral part of the people, ideologically linked with them, economically employed with them, educationally trained with them, and socially adjusted to them. There would neither be need for the army to be separate from the people, nor excluded from politics. The army would never have remained an instrument of force and coercion. If the army was able to see itself as part of the people, to embrace the same ideology as the people under a revolutionary and not a political party system, and if the army was turned into a productive arm of government, then it would neither have been used as an instrument to sponsor political riots, as was the case in the days that Lieutenant Colonel Azan U. Kassina governed northern Nigeria, nor could it have been used as an instrument of pogrom, as it was used in the days that Gowon took over the reins of power in the Federation. It would also not have been used as an instrument of arson, looting, and brigandage as it was used during the Civil War. Economically, we agreed that we had an extreme form of capitalism in Nigeria in 1965, which was not good for a newly emergent nation. Under that system, the vast majority of our people, that is to say, about 99%, were extremely poor and lived in abject poverty, while a few millionaires were being created here and there all over the country by using their political connections to divert government, the people's money, into their hands. To be specific, there were governmental finance corporations and marketing boards, which were used to divert public money into private hands by way of loans and inflated contracts. This system also favored a few middlemen whose palms were greased by this diversion of funds. The masses did not benefit but were impoverished thereby, hence the ever-widening gap between the rich and the poor. No avenues were open to check or correct these horrible anomalies. Our revolutionary principles provided for a total change of that economic order. We planned to mobilize the people so that they would produce most of the things that they needed for the betterment of their lives. It was already established everywhere in the world that when people work collectively, they produce much more than when they work individually. Therefore, farms were to be enlarged for the people, not grabbed from them, and concentrated in one or two hands, as happened and still continue to happen to this day. If farms were enlarged and held collectively, everyone would have a sense of belonging and would take part in communal production. Thus, it would be more profitable and socially desirable to bring in tractors, harvesters, and other agricultural machines to serve the whole community than to buy these machines with public funds for private individuals. It would be more profitable and socially desirable to introduce new crops and new farming technology for the benefit of the whole community than to hand over this public benefit to private individuals. It would also be more profitable and socially desirable to collectively build well-planned modern houses in the form of flats, flatlets, and hostels for the whole community than to leave individuals to continue to struggling to build for themselves hopeless little huts and single-room houses, which provided neither comfort nor self-respect. This revolutionary system would have certainly put an end to the over-widening gap between the laborers and the master landowners, who had only acquired such land by using governmental powers to grab land from the people. For instance, many army officers, civil servants, and others emerged as master landowners, owning several hectares of land, not by inheritance or natural result of hard work, but by twisting and using governmental power to deprive the people of their land, while grabbing the same into their own hands. As this master land ownership was already developing in 1965, the masses were being turned into landless serfs without visible means of livelihood and without anything at all to pass down to their posterities. They could only work as farm hands in a cutthroat system in which the master fixed the wages, irrespective of whatever the government fixed as the minimum wage for the area. Under our planned revolutionary system, workshops were to be collectively built for artisans and tradesmen to practice their arts and trade communally. They were to collectively enjoy the benefit of machination and automation, adequate provision of infrastructures such as access roads, water supply, electricity, houses, and recreational facilities. They were also to enjoy adequate availability of raw materials, good and stable prices, and marketing facilities. Transportation was to be facilitated by the fusing of our transport service into a network so that transporters could work together to serve the people more efficiently. Transporters, on the other hand, would enjoy increased and constantly maintained roads, railways, and airway facilities, and adequate provision of public garages, car parks, and repair workshops equipped with recreational facilities. The workshops of artisans and tradesmen will be merged mainly into factories, and labor-saving machines will be made available to them on a part ownership basis. In this way, development will be more rapid. There will be no need for a few people to steal public funds with the purpose of